This machinima was created for Dr. Kapp's Bloomsburg University course called Special Topics Second Life. The purpose of this machinima is to teach college freshmen about the motherboard, its components, and how they function. This lesson could be taught in the classroom using traditional teaching strategies. An instructor could present a lecture, students could take notes, and they could read the textbook. However, students today are so plugged in to technology, their learning styles and interests have changed. In many instances, teaching a lesson with some type of technology will improve student interest and learning. Second Life could be used for this lesson. It is a three-dimensional application software program that can be downloaded from the internet for free. Components for the motherboard could be created in a three-dimensional environment. Once the components have been completed, a Second Life note card can be attached to individual components to describe and label its features. Second Life is a three-dimensional virtual world. All of the objects and environments are created by users. As you can see, sometimes you can walk through objects. You can view them from different angles, sides, and perspectives. Some are made to look very realistic. Second Life is also a social networking application. This is Help Island Public. As you can see, it is very populated. Right now it is 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I was here earlier today at 9 a.m. and it was just as populated as it is now. Avatars communicate through the chat, or there's also a voice over IP option. There's a little talk button that you can press to communicate by speaking through your microphone. The purpose of this machinima is to show how this lesson could be developed in Second Life. Students will build a three-dimensional motherboard and learn about components on the motherboard. They will experience team dynamics and learn to use a 3D application. There are two learning objectives for this lesson. Number one, a team of 4 or 5 students will select a two-dimensional picture of a motherboard and will build a three-dimensional model of that motherboard in Second Life. And number two, each team will add 6 note cards to label and define 6 different components on the motherboard. This machinima lesson will demonstrate the CoCreation archetype. This archetype is a type of instructional strategy that can be used to teach an effective lesson in a three-dimensional environment. Co-creation refers to a team of students that work together to create or build something. Let's take a closer look. Co-creation involves good communication amongst team members. The physical distance between students communicating in a virtual environment may be more challenging than if they were sitting right next to each other. Students must develop a plan for how they intend to build the motherboard as a team. Members will have different schedules. Due to the online nature of this project and the always available, always on environment, some members may attempt to build components when the rest of the team is not present. Team members will need to discuss this to determine if this is acceptable. People on the team may work at different paces. Some may want to work on the team at a leisurely rate, or wait until the last minute and work on the project right before it is due. Others may be inclined to complete the project as soon as it is assigned. The team will need to come to a consensus on this issue. Each member of the team brings a different set of skills to the table. It would be helpful to try to identify those skills before the project is started. As the team progresses through the project, one or more leaders will emerge. Cooperation will be very important. And as for participation, well, some people will participate more than others. Let's take a look at building a motherboard in Second Life. One of the team members constructed these components on the motherboard before our first team meeting. You can see here that our motherboard is more developed. We used the chat feature to communicate, to discuss what components we should add and where we should place them. We also talked about things that had nothing to do with Second Life. Some of the avatars were quite humorous. Sometimes they teased one another. We never got to see what Ludwig Walpenheim looked like. His avatar never fully rendered. He continued to look like a glowing ghost. The team member was working on a Mac and sharing bandwidth with someone else in his home. On his own computer, he was able to see his avatar just fine. For students that are lacking experience with three-dimensional building skills, this assignment could prove to be very frustrating. Students should be encouraged to ask for help from the instructor and to spend time practicing independently prior to the group activity. Building a motherboard, even with experienced three-dimensional builders, is time-consuming. It would be beneficial for most teams to consider meeting for 3 or 4 different sessions instead of trying to complete it all in one sitting. Occasionally, with our team, there was miscommunication. More than one person was building the same item, or one avatar would tell someone where to put something, and then a different avatar would tell them to put it somewhere else. Communicating effectively through the chat can be challenging. Students will add a note card to 6 different components. To add a note card, you want to click on the Inventory button in the lower right-hand corner. Go to Create and select New Note. In this new note pane, you'd want to type a description of the component that you're defining. I'm just going to type a description here. However, you wouldn't really want to do that if you're describing a specific component. I'm going to click the Save button, and I'm going to close the window. New notes that are created always have the default name New Note. This should be renamed each time, so I'm going to right-click on the new note, and I'm going to select Rename. I'm just going to name this Motherboard. However, the description really isn't for the motherboard. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. I'm going to click on Random Access Memory here, and here's a note card that I made up earlier with a good description of RAM. We'll be using this later in the sequence. I'm going to close this note cards folder, and I have another folder called Scripts. In the Scripts folder, I have some script called RAM. I will be sharing this with the students. It can be used over and over again. It should be renamed each time you use it, and it will allow students to add a note card to a component. So to add a note card to a component, you want to right-click on the component and select Edit. Click on the Content tab. Drag the script from your inventory panel over to the content panel, and then you want to find the note card that you want to attach. I'm going to click on note cards to expand that folder, select Random Access Memory. Takes a second to render, and I'm going to close this window, and I'm going to close that window, and my note card should be in place for that object. Now avatars may right-click on the component, select Touch, and they'll receive this message. An object named RAM, owned by Fancy Bombastic, that's me, has given you a note card named Random Access Memory. If you select Keep, it will allow you to read the information on the note card. This machinima using the CoCreation archetype was produced by Liz Jenson. Avatars were played by the following people. I hope you found this machinima to be useful.